Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Cross. I'm the editorial director of ISSA Media. Today we have with us Doug Hoffman. Doug is the executive director of NORMI. Now, Doug, that's a long name for an organization, but it stands for the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. So
That's right.
sounds like you got an important job when you think about what's going on in the industry right now. And Doug
Yeah.
also contributes to Clean Facts Magazine and CMM Magazine, which we appreciate that very much. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation. Maybe
Yeah.
what you could do is, and I like your background there, so we know what NORMI is and what
Thank
you
you.
represent.
Yeah.
And very nice. Tell us a
Thanks.
little bit about yourself and what you do in the industry. Just a quick
Yeah, my background, Jeff, is in the construction industry. So I was in the construction industry for 35 plus years. I know I don't look that old, but 35, 40 years. And I did a lot of construction, plumbing, roofing. And so I realized that a lot of the problems that we have in our environments dealing with mold, indoor environments, have to do with the building process. So I wrote a book, Mold-Free Construction, and that led us into actually beginning training on mold assessment and mold remediation in 2004 for the Louisiana state licensing law. Since then, 5 states, District of Columbia, which I know is not a state, but 5 municipalities require licensing in the mold profession. And so we've been very proactive in getting training out there. And our tagline has been, it's not just about getting a license, but it's about building a successful business. And so we don't want guys to come to a class, get licensed, and then never see them again. We want them involved in the trade association, connected every week. We have free training every week. And we want them connected to the industry so they can learn about all the newest techniques and products and so forth that's out there. So that's what we do.
Very important. And by the way, I promise I'll make us both look younger in this presentation. If my editing skills are any good, they're probably not.
Well, for sure, work on yours.
Exactly. I hear that all the time. I might give you a pimple now. Well, Doug, seriously, let's talk about an important topic here. Right now, we're, maybe at the beginning of this pandemic with buildings being shut down and, some businesses are staying open, the essential one. Others are not. And so they're closing up, locking up. What is going to happen to those buildings in the next few months, if this goes on for a few months, when they go back in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I tell you, Jeff, when you posed this question to me last week, I've been so covered up just trying to keep our head above water with all the demand on training that I hadn't really thought much about it. And so it really opened the door for me to think about, from a building standpoint, is there something they should do before they close up? Is there something they can do while it's closed up? And certainly, what should they do when they come back? So I think it's a great question. We think about our living spaces, and really whether it's residential or commercial, our living spaces are really meant to be lived in. And so conditioned space, air conditioning, heating, air movement, airflow, fresh air makeup, all of that stuff is addressed because we're living there. And if we're not, or working there, and if we're not there, what kinds of things can happen in regards to mold contamination? So, yeah, I think you hit something that we definitely need to deal with.
Yeah, right now on cleanfacts.com, Doug's article is there about the steps to take and the things to consider with these buildings, because we're trying to get through this, but these buildings, I know when I see like a house that's abandoned, it falls apart quick. It's like it knows it's not lived in.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
things start to happen to it.
Yeah, well, I think the word is entropy, right? Things wear out.
Exactly.
Get worse.
I tell you what, obviously our audience of cleaners and restorers aren't the ones that make these decisions about these buildings, unless it's their own. So they're going to the ones that have these accounts, theaters, restaurants that might be closed that aren't doing the delivery or pickup, office buildings. So many buildings are going to be closed up. And when the call comes to, the all clear, go back to work, these buildings are going to be used.
Yeah.
What advice would you give those who are the frontline workers, the cleaners and restorers, the business owners, as they go back to work?
You know, Jeff, so much of what we do is just so practical, and I really think a lot of it is just common sense. If you think about mold spores, they reside inside of our settled dust. So when we see dust on a piano and we move our fingers across it, we're actually picking up some of the mold spores. Some of the other stuff that's in that dust is dead skin cells, which is organic. So if you've got in an environment where you've got high humidity, that's going to eat that dust and the mold is just going to start growing. So if that kind of fundamental understanding of what mold needs to grow, I think there's some basic things that you can do to get started. Think about, if you're not living in the environment, how would you live in the environment to try to control mold growth? So making sure that things are cleaned up before you close it down. There aren't any empty food wrappers laying around, or water laying around somewhere, cleaning it up and making sure that all of that is put away. And then I think you've got to think about, how can I get fresh air in? If there's a way that I can get fresh air in. I think in my article I suggested maybe somebody could go back every day or two and at least maybe open a window or door, get some fresh air in there, keep the blinds open and the curtains open so that the UV light can come in, because that's a natural, it will naturally destroy any kind of mold growth that might be in the environment. And then keeping the relative humidity at a 60% or lower, according to ASHRAE, that's what they recommend, and I think that's correct. An air conditioning system is primarily a dehumidifier. So if you can set it so that it's maybe at 80 degrees or something, so at least it will come on periodically and dry out the environment. In our industry, we always say, keep it dry, keep it dry, keep it dry. And that really is a major factor in buildings that are closed up, because they end up becoming little petri dishes with high humidity. And if there's any chance that there's mold spore in there, it's going to take off and grow.
Okay, so good information, but we're talking about preparing buildings and keeping an eye on them. That's not going to happen with every building.
Yeah.
As you know, think about a movie theater. Hopefully they clean them up before they shut them down. Are they going into every theater? If there's 30 of them, 30 screens, are they going in there and inspecting? Probably not. I can't imagine. So our cleaners, our restorers, our mold people are going to go into these buildings. The buildings that are not taken care of, like you just said.
Yes.
What are some worst case scenarios we might see?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because even when you have people clean, oftentimes they don't hit all of those horizontal surfaces. So especially up high, crown molding and lights and so forth up high in the environment. So I think what we do when we walk into the building is, first of all, when we open it up, we want to be aware of the fact that there could be a problem there. And so at least be aware, follow your senses, your sense of smell. Obviously, take a good look around, make sure that you're looking at what might be there. But I think you can trust your senses in terms of protecting yourself. There's nothing wrong with wearing an N95 mask if there was one around. Of course, they're hard to find right now, But I think that's the key, is when you walk in, be aware that this probably contaminated to some degree. I'm not trying to scare folks, but a building setting, like I said, it wasn't designed to set free. It was designed for people to live in it. And work in it. Make sure that there's not something that seems obvious. And then I think is the question of the cleaning protocol, the sanitizing protocol, which really needs to take place, especially since we're dealing with other kinds of microbials besides just mold.
Good advice. You mentioned we don't want to scare people, but they should be concerned about that when they go back in these buildings. I guess if they walk in and something's crawling on the wall, that should be a clue. That's a joke.
I think so, yeah.
So let me ask you this. I want you to peer into the future, Doug. You're an expert. Could we see a huge boom in mold work coming up? Should we be ready? Should our manufacturing products think about this?
Yes. And yes. Yeah, I think the thing is that there's a couple of different aspects of this. Of course, we're talking to our remediators and our assessors, indoor air quality assessors all the time. And one of the things that we're putting in place, as you know, is a new training program, certification for sanitizing. And if I could just take a second to talk about the concept of using surrogates. Oftentimes we think about mold as being just a mold problem that's fixed, but the truth is when we remove mold from an environment, it serves as a surrogate for a lot of other indoor air quality issues. And probably the best example I can give on that is if you're using a air filtration device, an AFD as an air scrubber, it's not going to suck the mold spores out of the air and leave all of the pollen. It's going to take everything. And so same way with wiping down with a biocide, it's not going to kill the mold and leave the E. coli. So when we're dealing with bacteria and viruses, one of the things that we have trained our guys to think about is expanding their thinking, be a little more particular in the way they sanitize an environment, but make sure that they're using techniques and protocols that are going to clean this environment that's been sitting empty for a month, 2 months, 3 months, make sure that it's cleaned thoroughly with the right kind of protocol so that the environment can be sanitized of not only fungus, but bacteria and also viruses.
Good information. I see a problem or a challenge coming up when they go back to work and these building owners expect the same price.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of that, welcome to capitalism, right? Supply and demand. But the truth is that I really think the only buildings that are going to need to be sanitized are the buildings that are closed.
It's going to be a lot of buildings. I wonder how many there are.
Exactly. So I think what we're going to see is you're exactly right. I think there's going to be a boom in the industry, maybe not so much from the remediation side of it, although I think that's going to happen as well. But certainly on the sanitizing side and the cleaning side of it, there's going to be a big need for guys who are professionals and trained and certified and really know what they're doing. And so that's why we're excited about what we're going to be able to offer here in the next week or so.
Thank you, Doug. And I assume that you have people in your organization who could do some inspections for some of our frontline workers, our companies, if they have concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. At our website, NORMI.org, there's a little block, not a little block, but a big block that says find a NORMI professional. And it's a locator where people can search by certification, by zip code, by name. They can find this certified sanitizing professional if they want. All of that's at NORMI.org. And yeah, we're there. We're going to be there to help.
Well, I just hope people watch this and they see the potential coming up. It could be in a month. It could be 2 months. We don't know. A lot of unknowns. Yeah. But if this goes into summer and the heat rises and these buildings are closed, it's going to be scary.
That's right. Well, we're learning a lot, aren't we?
We are. Well, Doug, I appreciate your time. I tell you what, let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks, and let's do this again and do an update.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Be safe.
Take care.